he found that kids with cancer, their brothers and sisters often wished they were sick themselves because the sick kid got to make a wish, they got to do all the fun stuff, and the siblings struggled. So we created a camp for the siblings of kids with cancer. It was unbelievable. And I was excited because I was going to be a camp counselor. Because in South Africa, we didn't have camps, right? We didn't have summer camps, really. So I'd never been a counselor, and this is going to be the first time. And she was like, yes, please. You can go, you can be a child, because I am a 14-year-old trapped in an older dude's body. And she was like, oh, you can go be immature, you can have a lot of fun. So I was really excited about going to camp. And I was one of the co-founders of the camp, so I was really important. People were going to love me because we did this wonderful thing. I go to the camp, and I got this group of kids, Group D, I remember, a bunch of great kids, except for one. This camp was one of those ropes courses. You climb ropes, you learn to do things together. I had this great group, but the one little boy, you know this kid. His name is Abi. He's one of those kids that when everything is going good at school, somebody's got to mess it up. And as a teacher, you know that kid, right? The kid when there's a great, everything's cool, but the fire alarm, that kid. Everybody gets to go home early, but he's not going to stop talking. No, you're going to go home late. So that was him, Abi. I'll be very honest with you, and this is where my shame comes in. I hated him the minute I saw his face. I did not like his face. That kid walked into camp, and he was walking like this, and he was really cocky, and he was spitting, and he was swearing, and I was like, you know what? I don't want this kid in here. This camp was going to be so amazing. This is going to be my glory. I mean, I was going to be a hero. People were going to love me for what we did. He is going to mess it up. I didn't want him in my group. I actually went to the head of the camp and I said, can you please change this boy? I don't want him in my group. He was 13 years old. He was wild. He was rude. We would be sitting around the campfire. Kids were talking about their brothers or sisters who were sick. And he would heckle them. They were crying and he would call them a crybaby. He was a bully. He was horrible. Didn't want anything to do with this kid. But all the way through camp, he was in my face. And I kept on saying, please make him disappear. Please let this guy. No, the more I prayed for him to disappear, the more he was in my face. On the last day, we had to climb this climbing wall. It's really high. It's a huge tower. You put on a helmet and a harness, and you climb up the climbing wall. When you hit the top, you make eye contact and look down, and then you rappel down. We pulled straws to see who was going to go first. Of course, who gets to go first? Abi. Now, he refused to put on the helmet and the harness when he climbed. He said, because when he tags buildings and does graffiti, he doesn't need a helmet or a harness. So I'm in this guy's face. I'm like, dude, you put on the helmet and the harness, otherwise you're going to go home right now. He goes, I don't care. I said to him, put on the harness. I was getting really angry at him. He said, I'm not going to do it. I said, you bet. He's fine. Puts on the helmet and harness. This kid climbed up, touches the top, and climbed down in no time. I could not believe how quickly he did it. Up and down, and he's off. Takes off the helmet, throws it on the ground, spits, and he goes and he sits in the corner. All the other kids climbed. Some of them made it to the top, some didn't. And the last little girl to climb, her name was Rachel. Rachel was 11 years old. Her sister, whose name was Jonna, had died the year before, and Rachel was now an only child. She didn't do very much in camp. She curled up in a ball. She wore her sister's clothes. She listened to her sister's music. She didn't do very much. But we convinced her in the last day to maybe climb a little bit up the tower so maybe she could get a good view, because it was really cool from up there. She puts on the helmet and the harness, and this little girl climbs. Well, she made it about 3/4 of the way up, but then she froze. She got stuck. Now, I don't know if any of you have climbed one of those climbing walls. When you step back, it's easy to see where the blocks are, but when you are clinging onto those things, thinking that you're actually going to probably fall down, you are really nervous. She got stuck, and she couldn't move. We were all yelling, go this way, go that way from the bottom, trying to help her. She couldn't move. So then I got this bee in my bonnet. You see, the person who was the most motivational at that camp won this fantastic trophy. It was called the Rocky Balboa Trophy. It was a trophy of a boxer with his arms up, and I wanted to win that trophy because I am a motivational speaker. I thought I was too cool. Hands down, I was going to win this thing because I'm such an important dude. So I'm looking at this, and I'm looking at this kid, and I'm thinking, how am I? Then I realized, so there were 2 ropes. So I figured out if I climbed up alongside her and helped her maneuver up, then she would get to the top, I'd be a hero, I'd win the trophy, everything would be cool. Now, I'm not afraid of too many things. I've done some pretty wild stuff in my life. I always say, just as a joke, I always say, the only thing I'm afraid of is my wife. But it's an old joke. But so I was not afraid to go up this tower because I've been in the army. I've got a black belt in Taekwondo. I'm cool. So get up the second rope and I start climbing. Big deal is now going to save the world. Hero. So I get up alongside her and I pat her on the back. I said, come on, Rachel, I know you can do this. I know you can do this. And she's crying. She's just like, I can't do it. I'm like, I know you can do this. I know you can, hero. So I thought, man, if I climbed above her, maybe I could just help her find the places. So I climb above her and I look down and I about freaked out. It was so high. My mouth went dry. My knees went weak. You know when you're driving along the road and that cop car's light goes on behind you? Even if you've done nothing, your elbows and your knees go weak and you've got to go to the loo like instantly. Man, I was like, get me off this tower. I was dizzy. My mouth was dry. Forget her. I'm like, I'm going to die. This is so high. I couldn't look down. So I didn't want to disappoint myself and all the children. So I thought, you know what? I've got to get to the top of this thing. One of the hardest things I've ever done in my life was climb to the top of that tower. Mouth dry, dizzy, hit the top. The guy lets me rappel down. I didn't even see Rachel on the way down. Forget her. I'm getting off this thing. I got to the bottom. I was actually, my body was shaking. And after I regained my composure, I looked up and Rachel was still in that same position. She was crying so hard that her tears were bouncing off that tower. I could see how hard she was crying. The guy says, Rachel, okay, listen, you should probably come down. So she's getting ready, but all of a sudden there's this yell that comes from the side. And I look over and it's Abi. And he comes over, he goes, Rachel, Rachel. We all sort of don't know what's going on. She looks under her shoulder, he goes, Rachel, do it for your sister. Do it for Jonna. And I swear to you, I'm not telling you a word of a lie. That child turned and she started to climb. She did not hesitate for a second. Climbed to the top of that tower, and as she hit the top of the tower and looked down, frozen in my mind is a black and white photograph of that child's face. The look of triumph and joy I will never forget as long as I live. She came down off the tower. We're all hugging. I'm crying. She's crying. Everybody's crying. Abi breaks through the crowd and he walks up to her and he says, I knew you could do it. Spits and he walks off. Abi won the trophy for being the most motivational in camp. By 2 points. I was 2 points behind. It was such a close race. He won the trophy. He's standing on the top of the little yellow school bus with the trophy. He was such an excited kid. The thing is, and this is where my embarrassment, shame, and the do-over comes in. You see, I judged that little boy. The minute I saw his face, I automatically labeled him and put him in a category and didn't have time for him because of my own self-importance and my own ego. And what I found out afterwards was that he was being bullied and beaten by his father. His father was abusing drugs to manage his distress over the brother who was in treatment. And that little boy was getting beaten up every day. And all he was doing was standing up and waving and saying, I'm here, I need you. But I couldn't see that because I was so busy being an important dude. I share that story with a lot of kids because so often when kids are in an area with other kids or even us as adults, we don't make the connection because we have this preconceived notion of what somebody is. And that little boy was really a diamond in the rough. And he finished university and has done pretty well. Rachel has just had her second child. This happened a long time ago. And I'm very happy to say that when I have spoken to them, they both said that was probably the most important time in their life. And my dream one day, because I have a lot of them, is to write a book that starts on either end. One is Rachel's story, one is Abi's story, and it meets in the middle when they're on their tower. So you could flip the book over and read it either way.